On today's World Insight, efforts to shake off global economic shocks with China's targeted policy on growth. The lowdown from an eminent Chinese economist who's a CPPCC member.
The growth rate that we can achieve will be lower.
The Hong Kong government doing its best to stop COVID-19 after months of social unrest. How's HK's economic and political situation shaping up? Answers from an HKSAR insider.
Hong Kong has accumulated quite a lot of experience in dealing with epidemics.
And China-U.S. ties tested by the coronavirus pandemic. Are we going to see cooperation between the two giants?
Hello and welcome to Weigh In 2 Sessions, a special on China's annual political season. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing in the Great Hall of the People. As the National People's Congress convenes Friday, some key decisions will have to be made on issues related to the nation's security. For example, economic security. Though no specific growth target has been named, it does propose a series of favorable policies for businesses of different scales. It's strategic security with an increasingly complicated international environment, and the health security of its citizens when COVID-19 is still casting a shadow on the world. Today, let's talk to those at the sessions and those who are watching the sessions very closely. First, about the Chinese economy. Meet Professor Bai Chong'en, a CPPCC member and a widely respected economist from China. He's the Dean of the School of Economics and Management from Tsinghua University. Professor Bai, such a pleasure talking to you again this year.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
The biggest question, GDP growth rate, that's the topic every year during the two sessions. This year, people are getting more curious with the collapse of the global economy. Tell me more about China's.
Right. This is a difficult question to answer, especially because the COVID-19 disease has spread worldwide, and that affects other countries' economies. The growth rate that we can realistically achieve will be lower than the growth target we set out before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Professor Bai, now one of the crucial issues is how to guarantee that the enterprises are likely to survive and hopefully later thrive. What has China done, do you think, that can be counted as effective so far?
I think that's the most important question to ask. To deal with the pandemic, I think we have to think about the longer term. When suppose the disease become controlled and things get to normal or approaching normal, then whether the current enterprises can survive until then is the most important factor about future growth. And the Chinese government has done a lot of work to help firms that are hit hard by the pandemic. We have been cutting the social security contributions. We have been cutting taxes, etc. I think we will cut more taxes, but still a lot more needs to be done. I think one key issue is how well we can target our measures to protect these enterprises. Different enterprises are hit to different extent by the pandemic. Some suffered very much, others don't suffer as much. Some even benefit from business-wise, from the pandemic. So if you offer the same extent of help to all enterprises, then inevitably some will feel inadequate. Others, the help is not really necessary, So we waste our very scarce fiscal resources. I think we need to target better our support measures. And I think different Chinese government ministries have a lot of data available, and we can use these data to design better targeted measures to help these enterprises.
Right. Professor Bai, you talk about targeted and tailored approach and policies for various sectors of China's economy. Can you give us some specific examples?
The demand is not back to normal yet. One possible reason is consumer psychology. During the height of the pandemic, some consumers cannot consume certain goods or services. But after the pandemic gets under control, they still cannot adjust their inertia. So we need to, for these firms, actually we are experimenting with consumption coupons are actually helpful to stimulate the demand for some products. Another group which doesn't have any demand at all or have very little demand. For example, the extreme case is a international travel agency. Then for these firms, you don't want them to fail. In this kind of situations, I think we need to give them fiscal subsidy.
There are a lot of people talk about the financial market, the global financial market, ups and downs. Of course, this time, it's a different logic regarding its relations from financial market to the general economy. What is your take about that relationship?
Yeah, the financial market, there are different types of financial markets. For example, a lot of people are very interested in the equity market or the stock market. If you expect to get back to normal or approaching normal, then we are only suffering temporary losses. Then the stock market will take this into account. The financial market tells us that people are still hopeful about the future.
I see. Professor Bai Chong'en, coming from Tsinghua University, well-known economist from China. Really appreciate it, Professor Bai. Thanks. Professor Bai Chong'en, you're watching World Insight from inside the Great Hall of the People. Coming up, the Hong Kong government is doing its best in containing COVID-19 after months of social unrest. How is the economic and political situation inside the SAR? What is at stake with security in Hong Kong? My interview with Tang Ying-yen, a CPPCC Standing Committee member and also the chairman of the West Kowloon Cultural District. The opening ceremony of the National People's Congress has just wrapped up behind me. You can see there are already empty lines of seats. The people's deputies have left the Great Hall of the People with a lot of questions in people's mind, and also answers from the government work report. China is facing big challenges: lingering COVID-19 threats, much heavier economic pressure, and more complicated geopolitics, just to name a few. Fixing them, the challenges and the pains they cause, is important. But as reflected in the ongoing session of the National People's Congress this year, it is not only about the determination to fixing problems, but skillfully applying solutions with precision. Well, how precise? Take a look at the economy. The government work report did not, for the very first time, propose any growth target, but it did propose one after another measures precisely priming to the most crucial areas of the economy for long-term results, like supporting micro, small, and medium-sized companies through tax and fee cuts, and carrying out policies encouraging lenders to give them easier access to a financial lifeline. Meanwhile, more targeted policies are applied to encourage rapid development of online businesses, which has been growing tremendously as a result of social distancing amid the pandemic. See, that's precise fix and bespoke acupunctured support. Another example is poverty alleviation. Though the term precise poverty alleviation was coined years ago, how to identify those in need and provide them with the exact kind of help and support, making sure financial aid going to the exact needs of the most indigent is a constant task. That task is only becoming more important since the deadline of eliminating absolute poverty in China falls this year. One more example about precision. The National People's Congress, China's top legislature, is working on a decision allowing its standing committee to pass legislation strengthening national security related to Hong Kong SAR. The introduction of the legislation will provide the exact legal basis for concrete actions to check the escalation of violence in Hong Kong as a deterrent and to quickly restore public order. For those who are familiar with the recent developments in Hong Kong, Article 23 of the Hong Kong Basic Law does touch on similar content. However, it is clear over the years that Hong Kong, given its political division, is not able to come to a consensus on this important task. So, based on the Constitution of China, in which Hong Kong is part of, precise legal actions are being discussed to meet that challenge and guarantee national security. So fixing problems, dealing with challenges, China has learned to act with precision, just like doing acupuncture, a popular treatment of traditional Chinese medicine. Insertion of very thin needles through your skin at strategic points on your body to treat pain, to improve overall wellness, and to balance the flow of energy. Clearly, precision is the key. I'm Tian Wei, in front of the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Welcome back. This is Way in 2 Sessions, our special program from inside the Great Hall of the People. Tourism and retail are the two biggest contributors to Hong Kong's economy, but they were hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic and months of often violent protests. The economy, which is already in recession, suffered its worst contraction on record in the first 3 months of this year, and its unemployment rate rose to the highest in more than a decade in the February to April period. With the pandemic on the one hand, and there's also the uncertainty of the upcoming Legislative Council election, where is Hong Kong's future heading for? I talked to Henry Tang Ying-yen, a CPPCC Standing Committee member, and he's also the chairman of the board with the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority in Hong Kong. Take a listen. Mr. Tan, if I could, asking your thoughts about the one country, two system principle again, since there are a lot of things happening since last time we talked, and the 4 sessions certainly also give us some new inspirations and thinking. What do you personally make of it?
Under the one country, two system, we love our motherland, and most of the people in Hong Kong are patriotic. So there's no doubt that under one country, that we can enjoy the advantages of two systems, where we have a convertible currency, we have an open and free society, we have an independent judiciary, and these aspects have placed Hong Kong in a very, very important strategic position, both financially as well as economically. So I have no doubt the one country, two system is the best way forward for Hong Kong. Secondly, I have every confidence that the Central People's Government will also believe that the one country, two system is the best way forward for Hong Kong, and they will adhere to the principle of the one country, two system. Thirdly, we have returned to the motherland for nearly 23 years, and it has been not been completely trouble-free. Together with the Central People's Government, we must be able to stand firm on our belief of the one country, two system. We must be able to formulate policies that are beneficial to both Hong Kong and to the Central People's Government. So the People's Republic of China, with Hong Kong and Macau as its two systems, will be able to take the best advantage of this strategic development. So I have no doubt this constitutional arrangement is the best one for Hong Kong. And also, I have no doubt this constitutional arrangement is also a system where the Central People's Government will adhere to strictly. There are certain aspects of the Basic Law which we have not been able to complete. For example, the Article 23 of the Basic Law. We have made one attempt in the year 2003. We failed to gain majority at the Legislative Council. This is an aspect where the security of the country. So therefore, I believe it is something where we will have to, complete our responsibility under the Basic Law.
Actually, there are several layers of challenges. Earlier, we already see unilateralism, nationalism, and also anti-globalizing trend. Later, there's the pandemic. There is also the China-U.S. trade war. And now we see, China, when it's rising, it is inviting different kind of opinions from different parts of the world. So how do you think, out of this quite complex and intertwined factors, Hong Kong can work with the motherland to brave the storm?
I believe this pandemic is going to cause quite a lot of nationalism and also more unilateralism than in the past. It is understandable that many countries will want to pursue that path because the economies globally is going to take a very, very severe hit, probably the most severe hit that any one of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. The reason I say that is because if you put a sudden stop to the economy for weeks at a time or months at a time, it will cause the disruption of the supply lines, cause disruption of many of the manufacturing industries. It will cause disruption to many of the economic activities that all communities rely on in a globalized economy. So governments always will have the first priority is how to take care of their own people. But I think if I look ahead, I believe the globalization have caused the economies all over the world to be interlinked and mutually reliable upon each other. They will leverage their own strength to do what they do best in order to service not just their own community, but to serve the whole world. So therefore, that's why many of the supply chains are very globalized. And many of the companies, whether they are in America, Europe, China, Russia, South America, or other parts of the world, will not be able to survive just if they completely lock their borders, because each nation cannot be an island anymore. So looking ahead, I think they will eventually come to realize that while it's right to care for its own people first, the resources should be put to help their own people. But overall, it will still be important, and I think they'll come to realize that they cannot live alone. They're not alone in this world, and so therefore, the globalization process will still have to continue as they try to restart their economies.
Talking about COVID-19, what is your assessment of Hong Kong's been dealing with it and the current set of challenges as you've been having quite a few weeks of peace, quote unquote, from the pandemic?
First of all, Hong Kong has accumulated quite a lot of experience in dealing with epidemics. The swine flu, the H1N1 swine flu that started in North America somewhere, in 2009, and also multiple times of avian flu in between all that. We have taken advantage of that experience, and a lot of the know-how that we have gained, and also we have taken a very aggressive approach in contact tracing. And thirdly, we have not locked down the city, and I think that's a very important aspect. We have controlled many social distancing rules, such as no gathering of 4 people, or then later on we relaxed to 8. And then we closed down bars and a number of high-risk areas. But overall, I think most of the people are able to go about their lives and go about whatever they, in the daily shopping and things like that, to the market, to the supermarket. But looking ahead, while we have done a pretty good job at controlling COVID-19 here, I think we are beginning to see the re-emergence of social disruption, social unrest, and that is very worrying.
Mr. Tang, let me, before going to the social unrest, asking you about what about the last year's combination of both the social unrest and then dampening effect of COVID-19 on the economy of Hong Kong. What does that mean, do you think, for the coming year, starting from now, for Hong Kong?
Many of the work routines have been disrupted because of it. So our economy was already suffering under social unrest. And then come COVID-19, with the pandemic, our already struggling economy took another beating. So that's like a double whammy blow. And I'm sure it will do severe damage to our economy. So our biggest challenge is, of course, on how to revive our economy. But we have also other challenges, like the social divide that social unrest have created, and has been exacerbated and have worsened along the time.
Only a few months from the Legislative Council election. Now, earlier last year, we have seen the local election in the districts. The results reflect a certain degrees of unsatisfaction the public has toward the administration. How do you think officials should work, and how do you think the Legislative Council election is likely to proceed 5 months from now?
The district council, the local council elections were held in November of 2019 amid the social unrest. And in all the social unrest, all the months that leading up to it, I think a lot of people were dissatisfied with the Hong Kong SAR government, and they have expressed that dissatisfaction with their votes. So they have voted for a lot of the pan-democratic members of the opposition, and because the system is first past the post, a simple majority will take the seat. Therefore, the opposition have gained a lot of district council seats. I would say that they have not been doing a very good job in working for the community, and they have been trying to politicize the district council, which should primarily focus on the works of the local district that they are elected from. And they are supposed to serve the whole community and not just those whom they believe that had voted for them. So that's one. Now, looking forward, we are going to have legislative council elections in September of 2020, which is only about 3.5 months away. So I am, of course, very concerned that this dissatisfaction is going to carry over from the last social unrest, and especially now with more activity, our social unrest in the streets now just beginning to see. I believe the opposition is trying is trying to galvanize the community and remind them of the social unrest before, and ask them to continue with their futile efforts to take over the government as well as the Legislative Council. Their next target is to gain control of the Legislative Council. I believe the patriotic members of the Legislative Council and the community will have to work very, very hard in order not to allow them to do that.
Talking about working very hard, Mr. Tang, I know you are involved in an organization which is called the Hong Kong Coalition, and I've been reading about the manifesto coming from this organization. It's opposed to the street violence and also would urge citizens to unite to revive the coronavirus hit economy, and also it's been talking about Hong Kong at a crossroad. Now, how much do you think organizations like this will be able to play its role in a very devastating situation, shall I say, as a result of the political divide in Hong Kong?
Now, the government has been promoting a lot of initiatives, such as how to subsidizing companies to not to cut any of their employees, to subsidize many of the businesses, and to overcome this period where they have been shut down, so on and so forth. So the government has been doing quite a lot already. But the coalition, the primary goal right now is how to be complementary to what the government has been doing. So therefore, the coalition, although it just formed very, very recently, so they are now considering and discussing all sorts of initiatives on how to complement the Hong Kong SAR government. While we have support from most of the major corporations in Hong Kong, I believe it will have to be very careful in its way forward, that it will complement the Hong Kong SAR government, it will be effective, and it will help those who really need help. Pandemic have added a severe blow to our economy. So we are seeing rising unemployment. We are seeing more businesses close down. We are seeing more vacant office space and seeing more vacant retail space. So I believe the biggest victim of social unrest as well as the pandemic has been the economy. So it has to be our primary concern going forward.
You're watching World Insight, our special program, Way in 2 Sessions. Coming up, China-U.S. ties tested by the COVID-19 pandemic. Are we going to see cooperation between the two giants? Dr. Cheng Li from the Brookings Institution weighs in. You're watching Way in 2 Sessions, our special program for the 2 sessions of this year's China's annual political season. As China enters another political season, relations between China and the United States are drawing more attention than ever. The two have not been working well together in squaring off with the COVID-19. And now, with the impact of the pandemic on the economy gathering steam, hostility, some say, between the two has become more damaging to both. How should Beijing and Washington work around the disagreements and try to find out common interests? I talked to Dr. Cheng Li, Director and Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institution's John Thornton China Center for more. Dr. Cheng Li, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
We are speaking at an important time, the 2 sessions, China's annual political season underway. Now, does China want a Cold War with the United States when the U.S. is trying to be more confrontational than it ever been over the past few decades?
Of course not. But we should put it in the perspective. I think that when we talk about Cold War, by definition, is a military and ideological confrontation
between U.S.-led bloc and with the former Soviet Union-led bloc. That was the definition of the Cold War in history. Now, of course, that on one hand, I do not see that the United States and China, have a fundamental different, ideology, such as that what happened in the Cold War, that either I win, defeat you, or you win, defeat me. So this kind of zero-sum game thinking is very, very destructive during the Cold War. And but of course, that the two countries engage in the military confrontation, even some regional wars. That was the Cold War. Now, looking back, that I do not see policymakers in both countries actually really wanted to have a war. But unfortunately, both countries are preparing for that scenario. We do see some kind of differences in terms of political and ideological, in terms of political system or ideological approach. So this is actually not just in the United States. To a certain extent, we enter a period with social media, with the rise of nationalism in many parts of the world. We enter a period with a lot of uncertainty, and particularly with AI, with with some new development. So this will be devastating. Like Dr. Kissinger always reminds us, his article April 3rd in Wall Street Journal, and his speech in Beijing and early on in New York last November, talk about the U.S. and China on the foothill of a new Cold War. This will be devastating. We should do everything to prevent that happening.
Well, Dr. Li, as you may know, it's not in China's interest to have a Cold War, whatever is the interpretation of the Cold War. It shouldn't be in the interest of the United States to do that either. And yet, complicated factors are dragging the two countries further apart. That concern is becoming ever bigger. So, Dr. Li, now, do you see any chance is working together on the pandemic could be one of those chances that U.S. and China still have? Is it possible?
Well, of course. But first of all, we do need to put this whole issue in a broad environment, because international environment has profoundly changed, even without COVID-19. There involves some economic and geopolitical landscape change. This is also related with distributional issues in both domestic economic disparity in both countries, but also in the international system in terms of you create winners and losers after decades-long economic globalization, but also involve technological revolution and also social media. This profoundly changed today's world. Now plus the coronavirus. Now we should put into perspective both China and the United States were really devastated. Of course, in a different period. If you look at the February and the early March, China actually was the major country hit. In later February, for example, when China reported 75,000 cases and 2,200 deaths, at that time, the outside world only have some confirmed cases over just 1,000. Only 8 people died. But now, certainly, it's a different picture. United States with 4% of world population, but with almost 1/3 of infected, reported infections, and also about 28 to 29% of deaths. Now, we do need to have empathy for both countries. But on the other hand, as a cooperation should be the theme. Actually, the isolation or lockdown is just the form to stop the spread of virus. But ultimately, it's international cooperation. It's a mutual support. Eventually, to find the medicine and also vaccine. But this will be international effort, not one country just will win out of that. I think that the U.S. is in a very painful period to search for the new way to respond to the ever-changing environment.
earlier there was the quote-unquote the trade war. Now, already first round of trade negotiations, the deal, and before it's being implemented, we see the pandemic. During this process, we also see the intentional decoupling, technologically speaking, between the United States and China, mainly by the U.S. side. And at the same time, we see now Chinese companies listed on the U.S. stock exchanges might be having problems too. So one after another. It seems that, Dr. Li, that whichever is the topic, Washington, at least from this part of the world, would believe always could pick it up and make it a topic against China. If not today, it might be tomorrow. In that sense, especially when this feeling is quite strong here in this part of the world, what can China really do from the official side, in a way, to deal with the United States?
Well, certainly that you have some varied concerns. Actually, people in Washington, again, American foreign policy is also under debate. There are a lot of critics, particularly by Democrats, but also by many scholars. They think this kind of decoupling or contain China does not serve the American interests. And recently, Bob Zoellick, former Deputy Secretary of State, also wrote an article in Wall Street Journal, particularly mentioning that the new Cold War, these kind of things, will hurt U.S., not help U.S. There are a lot of important debate going on. So I hope that the Chinese audience should understand America is not a monolithic entity, just like China is not a monolithic entity. There are different views, and it's very difficult to have a sound strategy. Now, the trade deal, certainly the certain aspects are still going on. For example, that in terms of market access, in terms of China's financial opening, and also in terms of intellectual property rights issue. But of course, some areas like agricultural products may not be moved as fast as both sides agree early on because of the coronavirus. And then in other areas like energy, probably because of the oil price, it's really stopped. But you are right that in terms of technological front, you do see a very strong move on the part of the United States in terms of the export control, and create a lot of hurdles for Huawei. But even that, I think there's some debate. Some American companies and have different views. They think that will hurt the U.S. Economy, and also that the international community, the companies, may not necessarily entirely implement, because you do need to provide alternatives. But the alternative is unclear for these companies. But also there's a fair competition. Now, we understand that because of Huawei, because China's technology catch up, because some of the issues that could undermine American security. So that's the response. But how to respond, whether it could adopt a fair policy, I think that there will go some period. And at the moment, I certainly see there's tensions. There's also unfortunate situation, which probably will hurt all of us. But we should be realistic. The technological competition, that issue, will be with us for months and years to come.
Professor Dr. Li, before we go, an important question. What do you consider, when we think about the bigger issue that China and U.S. together can handle, and an opportunity can be created? Will that be about international cooperation? Will that be about economic policies? Will that be about health sector? Any of the possibility with a shining light, do you see that, realistically speaking?
Yes, I think that unfortunately, we currently talk too much about the competition, but the reality is the cooperation is even more important. I do believe that both China and the United States wanted to have economic and financial stability in the world, and also believe that both China and the United States do not have this kind of devastating war, the war with no winner. I think this is a fundamental shared interest. But unfortunately, some people in Washington or maybe elsewhere did not see that or do not see that. Now, in terms of cooperation areas, we talk about the international public good, such as climate change, nuclear non-proliferation, and the drug traffic and control. And most importantly at the moment is the cooperation dealing with the coronavirus and other contentious disease. I think that actually coronavirus outbreak should be a wake-up call. Relatively speaking, I think people are still in the struggling to make sense of what happened. Medical community actually really emphasize cooperation based on my observation in both countries, particularly also that in China and the United States. So I think that we face the common enemy, which is coronavirus, not China, not the United States. Most important things, we should work together. We should be restrained, both sides, as Dr. Kissinger's article in the last month reminded us that the restraint is very, very important. And all of us should adjust to a new environment, but also should let the rational view prevail to avoid devastating consequences. We should take, both sides should take more responsibility to deal with the new challenge and to cooperate more rather than less.
We hope reason will be the logic. Thank you so much, Dr. Cheng Li, for joining us. All the best.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Cheng Li from the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. And that's all we have for this special program, Way Into Sessions, our special from inside the Great Hall of the People on the ongoing China's political season. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team here and also back in our Beijing studio. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.